On Jerusalem Dateline, the IDF explores Hamas's tunnel network under Shifa Hospital and finds the bodies of multiple hostages. Plus, hundreds of thousands rally in Washington, D.C. to show support for Israel. And cowboys in the fields of the Holy Land, standing with the farmers of Israel. And Israelis unite to help those forced to flee their homes with nothing. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. The head of the Israel Defense Forces says Israel is close to dismantling the military system of Hamas in the northern Gaza Strip. And he says they continue on to other areas after that. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl tells us they're finding plenty of military evidence and, sadly, hostage bodies.
The Israel Defense Forces discovered an operational terror tunnel shaft on the grounds of the Shifa Hospital. Israel has been saying tunnels under the hospital are part of a Hamas terror command center. The White House also says U.S. intelligence shows Hamas was using the medical facility to protect a key command center. Hamas denies Israel's claims, but the Israeli military also says it found photos and videos of hostages on laptop computers in the Shifa Hospital. They also discovered a booby-trapped vehicle containing a large amount of weapons.
We found a vehicle filled with ammunition, RPGs, AK-47s. We see handcuffs, knives, preparation for taking hostages from Israel on the attack of October 7th. As you can see, they were very well prepared, and where they're hiding all of this equipment is in a hospital, a place that's supposed to be for humanitarian aid. They have all this evil hidden here.
The State Department says it's because of Hamas' strategy that it's difficult for Israel to avoid civilian casualties.
Remember that it is Hamas that is putting all of these people in harm's way. It is Hamas that continues to operate inside hospitals as they have done inside mosques and schools and other civilian infrastructure. It is the Hamas that is the root of all this problem. That is creating such a difficult challenge for the international community and for the Israeli military.
In an interview with CBS News, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says they have concrete evidence that terror chieftains were hiding in the hospital and fled when Israeli troops entered. He also said they believe the hostages were there.
We had strong indications that they were held in the Shifa Hospital, which is one of the reasons we entered the hospital. If they were taken out. We have intelligence about the hostages, but again, as to your first question, I think the less I say about it, the better.
The Israeli military saying it recovered the bodies of 2 hostages near the Shifa Hospital. 65-year-old Yehudit Weiss, a mother of 5 whose husband was killed on October 7th, and IDF soldier Noah Marciano, also abducted on October 7th and murdered inside Gaza. President Biden is backing Israel's military operation, but also saying he discussed with Israelis their need to be incredibly careful in the Shifa Hospital raid, and saying the fighting in Gaza would go on until Hamas was defeated.
With regard to when is this going to stop, I think it's going to stop when Hamas no longer maintains the capacity to murder and abuse and just do horrific things to the Israelis.
But there is a clear disagreement between the U.S. and Israel. Netanyahu says Israel will maintain security control over Gaza after the war is over to protect Israel. But Biden sees a different future, again supporting a Palestinian state, an idea not likely to be popular here in Israel.
I made it clear to the Israelis that to Bibi and to his war cabinet, that I think the only ultimate answer here is a 2-state solution that's real.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
It appears that most Palestinians back Hamas in their fighting against Israel, though there's disagreement over just how deep that support is. And it could be crumbling as Israeli forces have hit Gaza hard in their war against terrorism. Dale Hurd has that story.
public protests against Hamas in Gaza are rare. However, this clip from the BBC on social media shows a woman in Gaza cursing the dogs of Hamas for her suffering before someone can be seen covering her mouth. There are Palestinians in Gaza who don't support Hamas, but polls have shown that most, in fact, do, or at least they did before Hamas brought misery and death to their doors. A project called Whispered in Gaza interviews Palestinians secretly and claims that most do not support Hamas, but says Palestinians are afraid of being killed if they speak out publicly.
وطبعا انت كمواطن غزاوي ان عرضت الحرب وقلت بديش حرب فانت خاين.
Corey Gill Schuster, a Canadian Israeli, has also been interviewing Palestinians as well as Israelis for his YouTube channel, The Ask Project, and has asked many Palestinians about Hamas. Schuster says every Palestinian he's interviewed on camera has backed Hamas, but he also wonders if they were all telling the truth.
I assume that in a lot of the videos, people are answering me thinking, what is the best thing to say that I will be safe? Do they actually believe it if they say harsh things like, yes, we should kill the Jews, we need to expel the Jews? I'm sure to a certain extent, but it is hard to know how much of that extremism is public pressure. It's impossible to know. Privately, with a few, and a very few, have I heard them say, yes, we have done a lot of damage to ourselves. They tell me this privately, they won't say it publicly. It's considered treasonous. They could be killed for it.
However, Schuster also does not think most Palestinians are secretly peace-loving. This Palestinian said he favored dropping a nuke on Tel Aviv. And polls have shown solid support for Hamas not only in Gaza but also in the West Bank, where the Palestinian Authority is in charge.
The Palestinian Authority is seen as weaklings and they do nothing against the Israelis. They are considered puppets of the Israelis, according to almost all Palestinians. And at least Hamas and Islamic Jihad fight the Israelis. And most Palestinians want there to be resistance. They want there to be violent resistance against the Israelis.
Samer Mohammed grew up in a Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon. Now a Christian living in the U.S., Samer says that he, like other Palestinians, was brainwashed to hate Israel and believes the chief problem is Islam.
Every Palestinian, he have a goal. And his goal to die for Allah, to die for Palestine. My brother, if you don't have anything to lose, if you are poor, everything darkness, this is the problem. We need to tell them about the Messiah, about Yeshua.
Unfortunately, Schuster's extensive interviews with Palestinians have shown him that most support Hamas because they hate Jews and want them to die, and he's not optimistic that that will change anytime soon. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Coming up, an historic stand for Israel. Hundreds of thousands march in Washington, D.C. in support of the Jewish state. Nearly 300,000 people filled the National Mall to show support for Israel this week. People of diverse faiths and political beliefs were united in their stand for the Jewish nation and against anti-Semitism. The rally came in response to weeks of pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel protests in America and around the world. CBN Washington correspondent Hillary Powell was at the march, and she brings us this report.
Adults, senior citizens, even entire families from around the country say they wanted to be at this event to be counted in this moment. Organizers say they are grateful for what it demonstrates, that Americans stand with Israel, that they condemn anti-Semitism, and also that they are calling for the full return of all remaining hostages currently being held by Hamas. with a message in song to stamp out hate. Organizers say an estimated 290,000 people spoke with their feet, gathering on the National Mall to stand with Israel, condemn anti-Semitism, and call for the safe return of the remaining nearly 240 hostages abducted by Hamas on October 7th. Family members fought back tears to tell their story.
My family is being held hostage by terrorists. I am here with you because I love my family, and I promised I would scream to the ends of the earth for them.
The March for Israel saw bipartisan endorsement of one of America's closest allies as criticism has intensified over Israel's offensive in Gaza, set off by the Hamas incursion. Overlooking a mass of Israeli and U.S. flags, top congressional leaders, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries, joined hands with Republicans House Speaker Mike Johnson and Iowa Senator Joni Ernst.
There are few issues in Washington that could so easily bring together leaders of both parties in both chambers, but the survival of the state of Israel and her people unites us together.
Congress will continue to support in a bipartisan way the state of Israel and Israel's unequivocal right to exist.
Crowd members draped in the Israeli flag stood side by side with Christians as well.
Gathered before me on this mall are people of all faiths, beliefs, identities, and backgrounds. You are united by your abhorrence of Jew hatred and your recognition of its lethal nature.
I am here to deliver a singular message. Israel, you are not alone.
Students from across the country showed up in strong numbers, including young voices, saying they are concerned for others.
Because we need to stand with our country in the times of need they're in.
One student group came from Miami to show support for Israel. High school senior Shoshana Wagoda says it has real personal impact as she prepares to head to college.
We're Jewish and we love Israel and it's our home. And that's the only place that we can feel really safe with all the anti-Semitism in the world.
We oppose the state of Israel because we are Jews.
A contingent of Jewish counter-protesters peacefully spoke out against Israel and Zionism in a crowd that seemed in support of Israel's continued military campaign counteroffensive. One father brought his family to the march and says it's sobering for his children to be called to action so young.
Yeah, we have kids who are in Jewish day school, and they're surrounded by people who are in mourning right now, and it's sad that they have to learn it at this age, but this is the world we live in, unfortunately.
Even the colors that you see all around this event, blue and white, are meant to signal pride and again condemn anti-Semitism in all of its forms. Peace has been the cornerstone of this event for the organizers, and D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says the presence of the National Guard has further helped to ensure that. In Washington, Hillary Powell, CBN News.
Up next, cowboys in the Holy Land, what they're doing to help Israelis while the war rages on. Cowboys on the kibbutz. A group of American cowboys have traveled to Israel to help Israeli farmers struggling to harvest their crops as the war with Hamas continues. CBN's Chuck Holton has more on these volunteers stepping in to show solidarity with Israel.
As fighting between Israel and Hamas militants enters its second month, it's straining much of the country's economy. Given the number of military reservists supporting the fight, local farms are short on manpower.
I mean, a lot of the dads and the men have been called up for reserves and to go to fight in Gaza. And so that leaves this area, and yeah, there's no one to harvest. So it's a need that needs done. And yeah, we just wanted to help out with that.
That's where a group of American cowboys has stepped in, traveling to Israel on their own dime to help fill the gap.
Once I got the call, I dropped everything and headed right over. Here today, we're putting in a fence to keep the pigs out of the crops, and then doing some harvest and some weeding and stuff like that, just all kinds of stuff.
The farmers here are suffering big time.
So because we've worked in this area for 20 years, obviously we're not going to leave our farmers. We've got 120 farmers in this region that we've helped. So obviously these guys are the guys we're helping. So the cowboys were on their way to come help, and somebody caught them on the way in and took a picture, and it went totally viral. So now I don't think there's an Israeli in the country that doesn't know about the cowboys. But literally, we're staying to task. We've got farms. We're picking zucchini here right now. If we don't pick these things, they're rot, right? We have to pick them.
When you look at the news, sometimes it seems extremely scary, and yeah, there's stuff going on, but it's not. It's different when you're here than how it feels so scary when you're just reading the headlines.
The men are here at the request of HaYovel, a group of American Christians who moved to Israel 20 years ago to support the Israeli people. These cowboys have come all the way from the United States at their own expense to stand out here in a field in the hot sun and harvest zucchinis right on the Jordanian border in a field that is essentially surrounded by minefields on all sides. And that might not seem like the way that you'd want to spend your vacation, but for these guys, it's not so much about the work that they're doing here. It's more about the chance to encourage Israelis and let them know that they're being supported from around the world.
I believe this is the Jewish people. It's their God-given land, and we need to support them here. I mean, it's a small country, and we need to stand with Israel. I think it's the important thing to do.
Most of these cowboys plan to stay for at least a month, hoping to provide meaningful help to the Israeli people during this difficult time.
I'm glad that people are hearing about it, but I don't want to be just, making some show of it or something. I want to be here actually helping the people of Israel and be a legitimate help.
From the Jordan Valley, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Still ahead, a country hurting but united. How Israelis are working together despite unspeakable tragedy. While many Israelis believe October 7th is the worst event in Jewish history since the Holocaust, they also feel the tragedy is bringing out the best in their people. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl shows us how they're stepping up to help people in need.
When Hamas attacked communities along the Gaza border October 7th, people escaped with almost no belongings. It didn't take long for Israelis from around the country to jump in and help.
The people of Israel now is in its best, and everybody takes part for effort to take care for us. The government, it's taken a lot of time for the government to act, but earlier the people is acting.
Nearly 1,000 residents of Be'eri community are staying at the David Hotel on the Dead Sea. This includes children who need activities and school. Inbal Bachar normally oversees preschool children up to age 3 in the Eshkol region. That includes her own kibbutz Be'eri, one of the hardest hit communities.
When we came to here, to Dead Sea, in the beginning, I thought that I have enough energy, to build all the kindergartens and all this. But very quick, I understood it. I'm not there. I'm not good for this project.
Then Israelis and organizations like Dror Israel and IsraAid joined in the effort.
They built us kindergartens from birth to 6 years old. And it took me something like 2.5 weeks to recover and to be able to wake up in the morning to do something, to want to awake in the morning.
Kindergarten teacher Ella Yalon left her home in central Israel to help.
We felt that with all the horrible things that happened to us here in Israel, I think most of the people in Israel wanted to do something. And when we saw this invitation, we understood as education people that this is the place we need to be right now.
One priority is getting children back to a regular routine.
We try to build a schedule that they know they come here in the morning, they go in the noontime. In the meanwhile, every day we do a circle that we sing, move a little bit, read stories.
They've also started a garden.
It's activity that bring the hope and thinking positively about the future, that something will grow.
Since 2001, Israel Aid has responded to more than 100 disasters worldwide, and this is the first time they are working in their home country.
We are now working in over a dozen locations across Israel with displaced communities from the Gaza border region.
Shahar May says it became clear the first day they would need to launch an operation.
We run a child and parent space where children can engage in play under the supervision of trained mental health professionals. And we also handle the logistical support for the donation store. Many people left their homes with absolutely nothing, just the clothes on their back.
May says even though the Be'eri residents have suffered huge trauma and loss, they are pulling together.
Everything we do is in full partnership with the kibbutz itself, but the community itself, watching them come together and the resilience that is here in that community and all of the communities that we work with is incredible.
Dr. Alon Pauker, a Be'eri resident, says this sense also gives them the strength and will to rebuild, even if it takes 2 or 3 years to come up with a solution.
When you come as a community, you can rebuild the community.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Dead Sea, Israel.
The right medical equipment during an emergency can mean the difference between life and death. Thanks to CBN Israel, life-saving equipment and paramedic bags are getting to response teams on the northern border. Take a look.
Just 5 miles from the border to Lebanon, CBN Israel is helping save lives.
Thanks to CBN, we got medical equipment and paramedic bags for multiple communities on the border. This is giving life-saving abilities to the few paramedics and response teams here.
This area is under such heavy attack, it's difficult for paramedics to get in.
The northern border is hot right now. They are shooting rockets at our settlements every day at both military and civilian targets. The Red Shield of David is not allowed in because even the Star of David is a target. Most of the people in this area evacuated. Those still here are part of the first response teams from the communities themselves. Some people stayed because they have fruit orchards or animal farms to take care of.
Thanks to your support, Israelis in desperate need of medical care have a chance at survival.
This is life-saving gear in these bags, intubation kits, oxygen, life-saving medicine, and other paramedic equipment. These kits were designed to save lives and keep people stable until medical units and rescue forces arrive. They are really needed since medical teams cannot enter. These kits are all we have to save lives.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. You can access our daily war updates on Facebook and YouTube. And remember to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the release of all the hostages, the safety of Israeli soldiers, and all innocent civilians caught in harm's way. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.